What do you mean I have a morale problem? Hi entrepreneurs, I'm Vicky Brown, and you're in the right place if you want to engage your team, boost your business, and grow your leadership muscle. So let's talk about team culture. Oh, not the flashy stuff that looks good on paper, but the real deal, those everyday behaviors that either build up your team or tear it down completely, because that's what actually matters. So let's talk about 4 culture killers that I've seen destroy teams from the inside out. And trust me, I've seen them play out more times than I can count. First up, the invisible hierarchy effect. You know, many of us pride ourselves on having a flat organization or an open door policy. We say things like, there's no hierarchy here, or everyone's voice matters equally. But let's be honest. Unspoken power structures, well, they exist in every organization, regardless of what's on paper. You see, when certain team members start to feel that only specific people's ideas get traction, or they notice that some voices are systematically ignored while others are amplified, well, that's when resentment starts to grow. And it grows fast. I've worked with companies where this invisible hierarchy was so embedded that newer team members would actually wait to hear what the favored few thought before offering their own opinions. That's when you know you've got a real problem. Now, here's how to break down those invisible barriers. Why not start rotating who leads different initiatives and meetings? Create intentional moments for your quieter team members to contribute, not by putting them on the spot, but by structuring conversations so everyone's voice is heard. One of my favorite strategies is implementing anonymous idea submission for key projects. It's fascinating to see which ideas rise to the top when names aren't attached. Suddenly, that new hire suggestion might outshine your veteran manager's approach, and that's exactly how meritocracy should work. Next, let's look at toxic positivity. It's the silent morale killer. This one is tricky because it often comes from good intentions. As leaders, we want to maintain a positive atmosphere. We want to focus on solutions, not problems. But there's a line where healthy positivity crosses into toxic territory. It happens when leaders reflexively shut down concerns with phrases like, let's stay positive, or we don't have time for negativity. What you're unknowingly doing is creating a culture where real issues go underground. They don't disappear, they just fester into deeper frustration because people learn that they can't speak openly about challenges. I once worked with a founder who was so committed to positive vibes only that his team actually created a separate Slack channel just to discuss the very real problems that they were facing. That's not the kind of parallel communication structure that you want. So I recommend creating reality check meetings. What's that? Well, they're dedicated spaces where your team members can bring up genuine concerns and challenges that they're facing. But the magic happens when you follow up these conversations with visible action steps. When people see you taking their concerns seriously, they'll bring issues to you directly instead of letting them simmer. Remember, acknowledging problems isn't being negative. It's being honest. And honesty is the foundation of any healthy team culture. Then there's the micro-trust erosion issue. When we think about trust as leaders, we tend to focus on the big moments, promotions, major decisions, crisis management. But what I've seen is that it's actually the small, daily moments that build or break trust. So let me give you a real-world example. I once worked with a CEO who was genuinely shocked when his entire product team resigned within 2 months of each other. Because from his perspective, he'd given them competitive salaries, flexible work arrangements, and plenty of autonomy. But what he couldn't see were all the micro betrayals that were happening daily, dismissing improvement suggestions without consideration, rescheduling their updates to accommodate more important meetings, taking credit for their innovations when he was speaking to the board. You see, these everyday moments matter enormously. Ignoring someone's suggestion in a meeting, canceling 101s at the last minute, consistently running late, or failing to credit someone for their idea, these seemingly small, minor actions create tiny cracks in trust. And over time, those cracks become chasms. Your team members are keeping score, whether consciously or unconsciously. And every time you follow through on a small promise, you deposit a bit of trust in the bank. And every time you don't, you make a withdrawal. And just like a real bank, if you make too many withdrawals without deposits, you'll find yourself facing bankruptcy. But in this case, it's an emotional and organizational bankruptcy, and that's much harder to recover from. So if you think you might have a microtrust erosion issue, the best way to fix it is to be intentional about follow-through. Someone shares an idea in a meeting, circle back in a week. If you miss a check-in, make it up and acknowledge the miss. Trust truly grows in the details of your day-to-day interactions. Now, this final culture killer is particularly frustrating because it creates such a gap between what companies say and what they do. Innovation gaslighting. Oh, leaders love to tell their teams, we value innovation. But then when employees actually suggest new ideas, they're met with, that's not how we do things here, or we tried something similar 5 years ago. Worse yet, they're subtly punished for taking risks that don't immediately pay off. You see, this disconnect between the stated values and the lived experience, well, that's a form of organizational gaslighting. You're telling people one thing is true, while your actions demonstrate the exact opposite. So how do you actually build a culture that walks the innovation talk? Well, you can start by creating innovation checkpoints. These are structured moments where you deliberately evaluate not just whether ideas succeeded, but how your team responded to them. Did you celebrate the person who took a calculated risk, even if it didn't pan out? Did you publicly share the lessons from a failed attempt? One strategy that's worked wonders for my clients is implementing a no penalty zone for first attempts. This means the first iteration of any new approach is explicitly protected from criticism about its imperfections. Instead, focus exclusively on what you learned and how to evolve it. The simple shift changes everything because suddenly people feel safe enough to bring their boldest ideas forward instead of playing it safe. And remember, your team is watching, not just what you say, but what you reward, what you punish, and what you ignore. Now, the good news is that awareness is the first step to change. So when you recognize these patterns early, then you can take steps to build a culture that genuinely supports your team members and a culture that allows them to do their best work. After all, culture isn't just what you put on your website or say in your all-hands meetings. It's the sum of your daily behaviors and decisions. So make them count. If you found this information helpful, please subscribe and share. And if these ideas resonate with you, well, I've got even more support waiting in our membership programs. From our Simple Start Premier with practical micro courses and monthly Q&As to our more comprehensive IDEO on Call membership. It gives you direct access to your own HR expert. We've designed everything so that it fits your business needs and your budget. Just use the link in the description and you can discover how we can help you build the team you need and want. And remember, your inspired leadership is the secret sauce to having a high-performance team and a wildly successful business you'll love. I'll see you next time on Leader's Journey.